Good evening. Tonight we will be discussing the types of power found within Wiccan magic. It is common knowledge, even amongst those unfamiliar with the true practice of Wicca, that some Wiccans do indeed practice magic. Though some of the ideas surrounding magic may be a little misguided and sometimes completely incorrect, the idea that a witch practices magic is ingrained in most minds today, and it's not entirely wrong. Wicca itself actively embraces the idea and use of magic, and does this openly, though it is often difficult to determine where the religion ends and where magic begins. In Wicca, magic has some very specific roles. Some of these are to improve our lives, to develop a relationship with the goddess and the god, and to return energy to the earth. The ways in which these can be accomplished are many and varied, so no two Wiccans will do things quite the same. It's a very unique practice, and everyone has their own way of doing things, and for the most part, that is completely fine. Actually defining magic can be surprisingly difficult. We talked about that in the last video. It's often easier to define what it is not than to define what it actually is. The way magic has been defined has changed drastically over the years. Today, one favorite definition is magic is the focusing of will to use natural energies to achieve a desired goal. This natural energy has three main sources: personal power, earth power, and divine power. There are many variations of these three, but essentially all power comes from either the practitioner, the earth, or the divine. Personal power, so the one that comes from within the practitioner, can be defined as the energy that resides within the body of the practitioner. This energy comes from many sources, most of which we don't even notice. This energy can be absorbed from the sun, the moon, the stars. We can get it from the food we eat and the water we drink. A small amount comes from the air when it is inhaled, and some of that we inhale is lost during the exhale. So we bring energy in when we inhale, and we send energy out when we exhale. This energy, whatever its source, is released during movement and exercise. In general, the energy we naturally absorb is much more than the energy we expend. So this extra energy is available for use as magic. Now, earth power is the energy that resides within the earth and all its products. So the energy that resides in trees and herbs and stones and water and all the other parts of the earth itself. All of these things have their own specific, unique energies which can be accessed. Items may be dipped into water to cleanse them, herbs can be burned to achieve a particular effect, and a simple crystal can be effective for healing. All of these are examples of earth power, and these are commonly utilized within the practice of Wicca. So you will see a lot of use of stones, of herbs, and a lot of other earth-related things during the practice of Wicca because it is a very earthy tradition. Divine power is just what it sounds like, power that comes from the divine. Though both personal and earth power are manifestations of divine power, they are not directly divine power. So they are not energy from the divine being used in magic. They're almost filtered through another party, such as yourself or the earth. Divine power is quite common within Wiccan magic. Whenever a Wiccan invokes the presence of the goddess or the god during any type of ritual, spell, or any type of rite at all, usually asking for a specific need to be met, that is divine power being invoked. It is this type of magic that is considered to be religious magic because it involves invoking the divine, and believing in the divine is in and of itself religious. Magic that uses personal or earth power without the direct presence of divine power is not considered religious in nature and simply is. It simply exists the way it is. So magic itself is not supernatural in nature. It might be defined as an occult practice, meaning that it has been in the past a hidden practice, but since it utilizes energies that are naturally occurring, it cannot be truly supernatural. It is simply that these energies have not been fully explained by science. Some of the energies that Wiccans work with have been explained in more recent years, at least to an extent. And I apologize if you hear a lot of foot tapping. There's a couple of dogs wandering around. So, apologies. So, a lot of things that we used to consider very magical have been explained, at least to a certain extent. Hypnotism, for example, is now an accepted practice and used legitimately throughout the world by many professionals. This was not always the case. Sorry, I have a dog here. So it was not always the case that these things were used in general practice. For example, psychology. You have a lot of hypnotism used in different practices and different types of psychology and even psychiatry. So hypnotism used to be thought of as dark magic and mind control. Today, we now know that's not true. It simply is a thing that can be used for the greater good of all. This type of misunderstanding has happened many times throughout the history of magic. So, a lot of things that we now consider commonplace were once considered magical. So, will science eventually explain all things magical? Probably. In the meantime, we'll use what we've got and we will explain it in the best way we know how. So, other magical practices may soon have a scientific explanation. Extrasensory perception, ESP, is one of those things, as science comes ever closer to explaining exactly how it works. We know it does sometimes work, and science is eventually going to tell us how. Okay, science and magic, even though they are often seen as contradictory, are actually complementary, because what we call magic is simply doing something that science isn't able to explain quite yet. It'll explain it all eventually. So just because magic isn't fully understood doesn't mean that it doesn't operate according to existing universal laws. Correctly performed magic does indeed work, much the way a properly performed science experiment does. So we might not know the ins and outs of why, but we do know that it does work, at least as long as you believe it does. And the three different types of power are often the way in which we can manifest the results we want. So personal power, earth power, divine power. We can use those three types of power to work our magic and to get the results we're looking for. So again, magic is simply something that we don't quite understand yet. We know it works, we don't know why. And every time I'm asked, do you think science will eventually explain it? Yep, I do, because science is kind of king here. At some point, science will, I'm looking at the dog, but at some point, science will indeed explain all those things that we consider so mystical. So eventually it will be demystified. But right now, there's still a mystical element to it. We know it works, we're not quite sure why. And the kinds of power that we need to make it work are available to everyone. You don't have to be special, you don't have to be born with special gifts, you don't have to be born a wizard or anything like that. This type of power is available to all of us. It is not exclusionary. So thank you for watching today. Tune in next week when we start to talk about how magic works and how you can make it work for you. Blessed be.